Welcome to the Tapestry of Life on CCP TV, Community College of Philadelphia's Emmy-nominated educational channel. I am Dr. Pascal Scholes, Professor of Behavioral Health and Human Services and Director of the Office of Collegiate Recovery, Community College of Philadelphia. Today's topic is Recovery Advocates. Recovery Advocacy is a grassroots recovery community organization made up of people throughout Philadelphia. The organization started with a handful of dedicated folks who recognized that the most difficult part of the road to recovery began after the individual had ceased using alcohol and other drugs. The strength and resilience is embedded in a true sharing of the shadow of one's addiction. To discuss the topic, I want to welcome back my co-host Rick Ford from the Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disabilities, and our very special guest, Bishop Rudolph Miles and Raquel Fetzer. Welcome. I always have that introduction. I kind of gotta read all this stuff, you know. Yeah. And I sometimes I mispronounce names and stuff, but I think I got them all right.
Well, slightly wrong, but that's all right.
Close enough?
Close enough.
Okay. Yeah. What I wanted to say is that I wanted to have this show because we've had such a long, extended movement about, you know, traditional ways in which we deal with the world. And I'm becoming increasingly more convinced that the social movement of recovery, which is the recovery advocacy movement, is probably as significant in one's recovery as seeing your psychiatrist. Yeah. I mean, I know there are psychiatrists who would totally disagree with me, or psychotherapists who would disagree with me. But one of the things that I've noticed here at the college with the new office that we've opened up a couple years ago is that people need a lot of like day-to-day support, irrespective of the once-a-week therapy that they might go to or something like that. And I suspect that it's that weekly continuing mentoring kind of activities that recovery advocates do that really is going to tip the scale in the direction that we want to go. I know the Department of Behavioral Health is very supportive of those ideas when Dr. Evans was there, and surely, you know, Commissioner Jones now. Yeah. So I was wondering, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got to where you are? That would, you know, I can go with either one to start.
Right. Okay, I'm Raquel Fetzer. So I am a certified recovery specialist at PROACT. At PROACT, we advocate for recovery. We provide peer support services. So we will help anyone, you know, with a wide variety of services, whether, you know, they walk in the door and they need treatment, or they walk in the door and they need help with creating a resume or doing a job search, or, you know, finding housing, additional case management services. So I've been there since October. However, October of 2017, I was a volunteer from March 2017 until I was hired in October. Mm-hmm. And I am a person in long-term recovery. I have almost 19 months sober, and for me, you know, it's my purpose to help others like me. I went to school for fashion design 10 years ago. I didn't like it. I didn't feel connected to doing it. This is the first thing in my life that I feel connected to doing. And I'm in recovery from alcohol, from heroin, methamphetamine, Xanax, cocaine, crack, you know, you name it. And
you were on methadone, you told me too, I think, at one point, right?
Yes, I was on methadone and maintenance before. That was my first time going into recovery.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you got through that and got to where you are today?
Absolutely. So I went to a rehab, was put on methadone maintenance. When I was discharged from that rehab, I went to a clinic, you know, was getting methadone daily. And, you know, then I started to taper off because I was going to a 12-step fellowship, and I decided that I wanted I wanted to do something different, that I didn't want to have to go somewhere every day.
Yeah.
And it was in the way, and with my employment, everything. So I began tapering off. I got to 2 milligrams, and then I ended up relapsing. So
That's the danger zone because it's a cliff.
Yes.
You just can't get off methadone real easy.
Yeah.
But however, I wasn't being 100% honest. I still had a lot of old behaviors. I didn't have like a change in my perception.
That's right.
In the way I thought.
People, places, things, and situations, as they say.
Exactly. Exactly. So I wasn't really doing any real work on myself, but but the seed was being planted, and then I went up to 122 milligrams, despite that
Which
I
is
had.
the top of usually. Yeah.
Yes, and that's what I mean by abusing it, because I was using that whole time, but I kept increasing on my dose and was able to get an increase. So that's how I abused it, and I definitely didn't need that high of a dose. And then I was incarcerated. And although they give you methadone in Philadelphia County prisons, for some reason the clinic I was going to denied me, but I didn't fight for it. I just figured no time like the present to get off of this.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was going to be going, to state prison or even federal prison. We didn't know really what was going to happen yet. So I just took advantage of that moment, and I just wanted to get back to that 12-step fellowship.
Yeah.
And that was my journey. And then, my sobriety now is better than ever, and I can look at all those experiences and be grateful for it. Like, I'm even grateful for my incarceration because I met some amazing women in there. And
How long were you incarcerated?
6 months.
6 months.
6 months.
So
and I
you
was
did
pro-
local jail. You didn't go upstate, as they say.
No, I didn't.
Yeah,
I
11 and a half
didn't.
months to
Stay near home.
They stayed. She was near home, as they
You know
say.
what's really funny? As you were talking, you thought you were arrested, but you was probably rescued.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good point.
And it's great to hear the discussion. You've been in recovery now for what, 19 months or
March
so?
5th will be 19 months.
And we congratulate you for that. I think
Congratulations.
there's folks that are viewing and listening that Philadelphia has become the mecca for recovery. We're talking now in these days and times population health, where everybody needs to really understand there are many pathways to recovery. You are very passionate at what you do. We see what you're doing. You mentioned you work at PROACT. For the viewers, PROACT is the Pennsylvania Recovery Organization Achieving Communities Together. And I want to be clear with Achieving Communities Together. I love the greatness of it. It's located right there at 17th Lehigh.
Yes.
So, everybody migrates to Philadelphia for what we do, treatment and recovery. Not only do they come to Philadelphia, they get here, they get in recovery, and then they go to CCP TV, which is a plethora of different variations of programs here for recovery. So, this show will reach a multitude of many people and say, wow, advocacy, recovery advocacy. And everybody has their way of giving back. I say this all the time. It takes a village to raise a child, but what about if the village is sick? We got a lot of work to do. Whatever way you find a way to help many people, it's equally important. So I applaud you for that.
Yeah, there aren't many paths to recovery, and I want to eventually get back to yours, but I was wondering, Bishop, what were you?
Mills.
Mills.
Rudy is fine.
I keep on calling
Rudy.
you. I keep on
I'm
calling you
not
Wells
big-
from
I'm not
They
big
did a
Bishop.
movie, Rudy.
I'm not big on titles, so Rudy is cool.
Okay, Rudy. So, does any of this make sense to you?
Oh, a lot of sense, and I also applaud you for what you are doing. I'm also a recovering addict. Have several years clean. I stopped counting after 1 year. For me, whenever I start counting years, I get a certain amount of years I want to celebrate. So I
Tell us a
don't.
little bit about that. What happens when you want to celebrate?
Well, I get a little happy now. I have 1 year clean. I have 2 years clean. I have 3 years clean. I think it's safe to take a hit. And that was my thinking.
To relapse.
I relapsed several times because I wanted to celebrate that I have time. So one of the ways that that helps me stay clean every day is that I don't really count the days. I don't do the time thing. I don't do no celebration. Every day I'm clean is a celebration.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. We get that.
Well, you know, part of the movement towards recovery advocacy is just that topic. It's like giving back. You're like,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily go to a lot of meetings necessarily sometimes, but you're working the community almost like it's a meeting.
Yeah.
You know, I know that's the way I feel when I'm here at the college. I mean, I feel like I know all these people and they come in and see me and they're all in different phases of recovery.
Right.
And I often say, gee, people used to say to me, why don't you go to a lot of meetings anymore? I said, well, because every day I go to work, I go to a meeting.
That's a meeting.
I mean, that's the way I actually
right.
feel about it.
Absolutely.
And it is kind of rewarding
Yeah.
that
Not
way.
only that, Pat, when you walk out your door, wherever you live at, it's a meeting. You're engaging.
Agree.
You're meeting people. You're having discussion. And guess what? Folks need hope and healing. So if you become a recovery advocate, your job is to share hope and healing with people.
Right.
You know what's interesting about this recovery advocacy movement? It's almost like in the old days, we would never tell anyone what
Right.
we did.
Right.
Right.
Do you remember that? It was called anonymity.
Yeah.
And now it's like, you just
Yeah.
go talk. Did you notice that?
Absolutely, and that's where I come from. Like with how I am, I'm not ashamed of the things that I did. I don't carry that guilt and shame anymore. I embrace it, and I want people to know, that you can, go to prison and still do something with your life. You can use these, crazy drugs and still be a productive member of society. That these experiences, they help you. Like you can recreate your life into being something better than ever. That's the way I feel today.
It has an impact on stigma because people look at you and they say, "Oh, he's a bishop, so he can't be in recovery because he's a bishop."
Right.
Yeah.
People say to me, "He's a professor. He's not in recovery. He just got educated." And when you say it to them, it kind of like it jars them.
Yeah.
If
Right.
you notice that, because you don't
Right.
look like, well, I thought you would just be like, in the gutter and your clothes would be dirty and you'd be crawling from one corner to another corner. I mean, so in a sense, this whole advocacy movement allows one to destigmatize the whole concept. But still, there's still a lot of people. There are faculty here, for example, who I know are in recovery, and we're trying to, for example, internally get like alliances so that the faculty with recovering people, and they might be able to take their courses so that the examples that they would use would come out of recovery. Some of them don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Some do.
Right.
But
right.
some of them don't because they come out of an old tradition.
Yeah.
And I think the advocacy movement is almost antagonistic. We talk about AA and NA and double trouble. We mention all these. But really, it conflicts with some of the basic rules of those organizations because, and I sometimes have to say to people, you don't mind if I tell people you're in recovery? Because, me, I don't shouldn't. And most people that I deal with don't, but there are people who still are very, very cautious of it. See, then I run into, like us sitting here on television, and you're fine with it,
Right.
But
How else are you going to help people unless you let them know where you came from? And for me, it serves two purposes. First of all, it shows folks that like to label us that some of the most talented, some of the most gifted, some of the most educated people are people that have fell to the addiction and now is in recovery. So, it stops that stigma that people put on us. And I think the most important thing, it shows folks that struggling that it can be done. Mm-hmm. And the reality of it is that the drug don't discriminate. It don't make no difference who you are,
True.
your education, how many degrees you have, what type of walk of life you come from, how much money you have. Drug don't care.
Yeah.
And so people need to understand it. First of all, it can happen to anybody, but more important, those that are struggling, you can get recovery. That's the message I try to get across. You can recover.
But because we're in the recovery process, I normally share with other people, what are you doing to enhance and enrich other folks' lives, family members, the block where you raise hell at? When do people see that there's something that exists that change you? And I go back to folks need to, why being rescued from the horrors of addiction if you ain't helping nobody else?
Exactly.
You know, and I think it's important that we walk those many paths, whether it was jails, institution, and even with what you're doing. I applaud you because folks, you hit on it, Pat. They said, Bishop, what did he do?
Yeah.
You know, that's your calling. And I tell folks quite often, find your niche.
Right.
You know, destiny waits for you.
Right.
I don't do what I do because I just know beyond a shadow of a doubt, my resurrection day is October the 2nd, 1990.
Okay.
And I count my days because I use that day as my resurrection day.
I hear you. I like
You know,
that.
it's like, it was almost like the quietest day of my life from the time I was in my mother's womb. That's how I look at that date.
Okay.
My biological birthday is July the 3rd. I ain't gonna tell you the year, but October the 2nd was the day that something happened that I can't pinpoint it. All I know is that I don't want to go back to jail. I don't want to play with drugs no more. I don't want to play guns no more. I don't want to hurt people.
Right.
And I think we all have a passion for what we do. And folks that are viewing and listening, there again, find your neighbors, your loved ones, your kids, the person you live with might be struggling. And when you see these type of shows, I'm telling you, man, you get quite emotional about this stuff because we want to change.
I've often thought, you talk about recovery advocacy, I've often thought that the 12-step program is really a good way of life. Not just in recovery. I mean, giving back, making amends, putting spirituality or God in your life, the first 3 steps of the God steps and all that. I've often thought that they're like a good blueprint for just living.
Yeah.
But see, people, when they hear it, they say, oh, that's that recovery stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's really life.
Right.
Don't you think? I mean, when you really think about it.
And what gets you in stuff and everything you do.
Yeah, and what gets you in trouble is you lose your focus on what and where you're going.
Right.
That's what gets you in trouble.
Right.
See, like when you relapsed, I'm sure it was because you were in some kind of denial or rationalization or projecting, and then you just figured, well, the easiest way to deal with this, I'll just act down. And then that becomes the focal point. She's acting out.
Well, for me, why I relapsed was the company I was keeping.
Yeah.
And I like getting away with stuff.
Yeah.
And it was that, because in addition to drugs and alcohol, the behavior and the lifestyle are an addiction as well.
That's right.
And I just like getting away with things, and until I did it, and I had a head full of recovery, so I wasn't successful, with doing it, and I was able to put it down when I was rescued.
Right.
But I do want to mention, seeing people like you, like a professor in recovery and a bishop in recovery, and what you
And
do.
a crackhead like me.
That gave me hope.
And he's on the Park and Recreation. He's a commissioner on the Park and Recreation.
Is that what you do?
Besides working at DVH.
And that gave me hope, because I remember how, my first time going into recovery at 27 years old, I had no idea. I had no hope. I was hopeless. I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. I had been a bartender, because that was the type of employment that I chose for myself after dropping out of school, because I could, drink the way I wanted to working at a bar. I knew that I couldn't bartend anymore because I was in recovery. Now I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. But when I came into recovery and saw people like you guys that had lived it and were doing something, I was like, oh wow, I can do something with my life.
Yeah.
This isn't like the end all.
Well, that's why advocacy is good. See, that's exactly what it's not hidden someplace anymore. Although there are still a large group of people that I know that are like, what?
I'm not going to tell them about it.
I'm not going to talk about that.
Right.
And I often say to them, well, why don't you get modern? Come into the real world.
Wake up.
Wake up. I mean, because that's where it's going.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know, but people just are very, very funny about it. They're very...
I never known an addict that really can keep their addiction a secret. And for most folks to believe, that you can keep this thing in the closet and you don't want to mention it or talk to nobody about it and go through life thinking that folks don't know, people always know. Somebody always see you.
Yeah.
But see, my problem here at the college is that they know me as the recovery guy.
Right.
So when people say, "Oh, you better get in touch with Pat Skoll," that usually means
That they've been exposed.
That would sound like to me, right?
that's what it means when they come to me. You know?
Right.
So it's a kind of a funny, and sometimes I actually get called down to like different places in the school.
Right.
And I say, I know why they're calling me because someone's high in their area.
Right.
And they figure that, and the reality of life is most of the time they are. I mean, when they call me down.
Yeah. But see, I found myself now doing workshops other than drug and alcohol. I'm being called to do workshops on behaviors and character and different things of that sort. So I think that once we progress in our recovery, we have something more to offer than how to get a day clean.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because see, the real addict that's trying to progress, you know, then we got to get into the real, what the definition of recovery is. Change of ideas, attitudes, and behaviors.
That's right.
And so one of the first things I learned is that I had to change everything about me. I had to actually forget a lot of things that I've learned, even before the drugs.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot more to offer than another day clean.
Yeah, and the problem is those neurotransmitter connections are still in your brain. So every once in a while, you'd be told, well, I can kind of like maybe go around this way and go around that way. And that's that junky. It stays with you.
Stinking thinking.
Stinking thinking,
Right.
It stays with you for a long time.
I'm going to do it my way one last time, and it's going to work.
Oh,
But I'm going to do that tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes.
Absolutely.
And what I've often said to people when I used to teach a course in counseling, the helping skills class, I say to them, look, many of the skills that you learned on the street, if they are molded slightly and moved forward, are good counseling skills. You know that you used to use them to get drugs from someone or to manipulate someone, but those skills are still very viable as a healing person because you need to move people from one place to another. You know, you have to get them to do things they don't want to do.
Right.
Just like it would say, "Look, I'll pay you next week."
Right.
You know, or whatever it is. Whatever you would say to someone.
Right. That's a good
Or can I do you any favors or something?
Right.
You know, things like that to get to where you want to go.
Right.
But those skills are still valuable. The ones that get you in trouble are the ones that are real personal, like just for me. I want to do this. I want to do it for me, for me, for me.
Self-centered.
You're all self-centered.
Right.
See, then you get yourself in a lot of trouble.
I think a lot of times we become less self-centered and more in service. I often tell people, you've been saved to serve.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a
I might use
pastor
that one,
right now. Probably stop.
Yes. Go ahead.
That's what they say. When in actuality, for those who have reached over into the recovery process, whatever you're recovering from, sexing, texting, gambling, shopping, eating disorder, nicotine, whatever your thing is, something happens when you crossed over. And I've been all over the world talking about recovery to different people, and I asked the $1 million question. Can you explain to me what happened to you? You know, if you can put it in words about stopping using whatever your thing was.
Okay.
And I shared it. So if you can explain to me what happened, then I'll tell you don't know what you're talking about because you had nothing to do with you stopping.
I know that's right.
You had nothing to do with it. Many times we stopped on sheer willpower.
Right.
I can get 30 days or 6 months or whatever trying to do it.
Right.
Well, and convince yourself and stay in denial by saying, I can do 30.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
I'm
then
not
I want to
like
go
them.
drink and celebrate I did 30, you know, or do drugs or whatever it is you're doing.
And it's interesting. That's the challenge. I tell people, if you're listening and viewing now, if you're watching TV or radio and say, hey, what is my thing? How do I cross over and not go back?
Well, and I know for me when you were just mentioning, the feelings before you even picked up a drink or a drug, fear. You know, I ran off of fear since I was a kid. Like, I never felt part of the joke ever since I was a child, and I always felt different than everyone, and I always thought there was something wrong with me, and that was just because of my fear. And you know, and that was what I ended up picking up over, was fear and just wanting to be accepted and looking for validation and thinking that I had to be perfect, and it's like the media and a lot of things portray that, you know, you have to be perfect, you have to be a doctor or a lawyer, and you have to have a white picket fence and a family, and, you know, but that's not real life.
Not at all.
That's what the media portrays, and that everyone's journey is different.
Yeah.
You know, we're all different people, and until coming into the recovery process and realizing that and digging deep, peeling off the layers of the onion, seeing why I drank and used for so many years, then I was able to acknowledge those things and have acceptance.
Well, for me, going and not coming back of service, I do about 10 hours every day, 6 to 7 days a week. I think I mentioned y'all guys, we have a movement now, Unified Network Initiative, and they the greatest bunch of guys in the world, and I have 5 or 10 guys, and I say guys but females, they the main ones that run the organization. We go out every day, give them back. And for me, that's what keeps me strong. Just being in service. We aggressive with our rehab. I mean, we go out into the neighborhoods. We talk to the pusher. We talk to the addict. We try to rescue the addict. I know a lot of organizations, including NA, saying you don't supposed to do that, but this is what we do.
Well, we're advocates. I think, and that's a perfect example of what advocacy really is. You're not going to hide behind. And I don't mean this in a negative way. God knows, we're all supportive of AA and NA and all those programs.
Absolutely.
But they don't really go to where we're talking a lot. They'll tell you to come to their meeting and share, as we say.
Right.
But we actually...
We need to go out.
We go out.
That's what the majority of the addicts and alcoholics is. They still in the community.
Were you addicted in your ministry?
Believe it or not, yes.
Oh, okay.
Believe it or not, yes. Ironically, I was a boy preacher at 12 years old. I didn't know what drug alcohol was. And my mama died when I was 30. I was teaching public school at the time, and it was a teacher that turned me on at 30, and I was a pastor of a major church. Oh. And I relapsed at 30.
The teacher turned you on?
Yeah, the teacher turned me on.
What a learning experience.
Literally.
Is that part of your biology lesson?
You need to talk with you at the class.
May I ask, what did the teacher turn you on to?
The teacher saw that I was grieving, and they invited me to a party.
Oh, okay.
And I love to dance, always did. And invited me upstairs, and that's when they was doing, at that time it was cocaine.
Oh, okay.
And he introduced me to cocaine.
It was in the 80s, probably. Cocaine was pretty popular in the 80s.
Right. It had to be in the 80s.
Yeah, in the 80s.
Right.
That was when the epidemic got going real nutty.
Yeah.
That was
Coke.
just before the crack thing.
Ooh.
Yeah, crack was 82, 83, somewhere.
82, 83.
Yeah.
Right.
BC before crack.
Before crack.
I came before
Yeah,
BC.
because-
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
because if you
right.
remember, that was the 10 year prior to that. There was the latency period for infection, HIV.
Exactly.
And I remember everybody in the early '80s was saying, I think I got to be tested because I don't know. There's that latency period. Maybe I've been positive and passing it on.
Right.
And things like that. People didn't know actually at the time.
Yeah.
So let me ask you both a question in terms of your advocacy. Being in recovery, what challenges in terms of urges, cravings, or desire? How do you handle that when it creeps up? Because we know that it doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
It's only under arrest. And in the midst of being passionate and helping people, what happens in that? Because it waits for you to get by yourself. What happens when it come up? Do you recognize it?
So for me, I have a really strong foundation in my recovery, and I don't allow my work to intertwine with my personal recovery. I keep the two as separate as possible.
Yeah.
So when those things come up, I was always incapable of being honest. So my main thing is when that comes up, I'm honest, and I pick up the phone and I call the women in my support network that I need to call, and that I can count on, and who won't co-sign my things.
Yeah,
They will tell me about myself and tell me truths about myself and help me dissect what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's what I do, and I go out and help someone else.
Great.
Or I will just try to do a kind act when that comes up. Like my thing is what are you doing when no one's looking? You know?
Yeah.
So I do that, and of course, like, I'm spiritual as well.
Great.
So I always go to my higher power of my understanding first.
Yeah.
And and I might make a meeting, things like that.
Yeah.
When that comes up, or I will, they really stress self-care at ProAct. Mm-hmm. They're always on me about self-care. So I might, go take a drive. That really clears my head.
Yeah.
Take a drive, pray, listen to music. Maybe I'm not that good with meditating, but I read a lot of spiritual things, so I'll read that.
You mentioned earlier about the kind of work you do in terms of your caseload building up.
Yes.
How do you balance that? And like you mentioned some of those things, meditation, take a drive. But I think part of being a recovery and an advocate, making sure that you can balance the scales.
So definitely a good night's rest, right? And definitely trying my best to take lunch breaks. That works. And, again, just staying connected after work. I try my best to leave my work at work, although we know working in the field that doesn't always happen, because the way I look at it is when I'm at work, yes, I'm blessed to get paid 40 hours a week to do this, but after that it's my higher powers work, and it's for my program. So balance is a thing that I've never mastered, and I don't know when I'm going to, but I just try my best to stay in the present.
Cool.
It's kind of interesting that you say that you find the space that you can go to talk to your higher power. And then when you were saying that, I said to myself, when I get in like a little wobbly, and it doesn't happen much anymore.
Yes.
But when I do, you know what I do? I walk over to the cathedral, because I'm here in college. I walk over to the cathedral, and I put some holy water on me, and I sit down. And I figure, well, I'm in the presence of the Lord, so I might as well pay attention to it.
It's great.
Well, it's interesting because people have their own little ways of finding comfort in their recovery. Does that make?
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, and I do a lot of Bishop, I guess, but that's not always automatic. I average about 4 hours a day in meditation. I was a chronic user, and pretty much means that under any type of circumstances, I can use. My biggest enemy is myself, and so I got to constantly watch. So I do about 3 to 4 hours. I don't know why. Every morning I just wake up every morning, and since I can't go back to sleep, do my prayer, read my Bible, do my meditation piece, and so that's on an average 3 to 4 hours every morning. But the biggest thing that I think keeps me clean, I watch me. My moods, my attitudes, because things will creep up and I get angry for no reason whatsoever. Or I'll launch out at my wife for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
She just asked me a simple question, what do you want, macaroni and cheese or rice? What do you mean what I want?
Yeah.
Can't you make it, so I go off the deep end. And so I have to monitor me.
It's interesting you say that because I'm sharing a lot of stuff here, but okay. At night, late at night, like if I go to bed fairly early, like 10 o'clock at night, I'm in bed.
Okay.
But it takes me about a half hour, 45 minutes to get to sleep because I do like an inventory of the day.
Right.
I go through the day. Well, I could have done this maybe a little better, and what could I do tomorrow? And and I get into talking to myself.
Okay.
And I used to, which I don't do anymore, is you remember in the early days of AA, NA, it was NA at my time, they used to have this little book of readings. Remember there was a little book, you would open it up, there were spiritual readings. You would read like 3 lines, and then you would think about those 3 lines for like 20 minutes. You remember that?
Yeah.
I still have those books actually in my office.
Okay.
But I tended to do it now at night, when I review what's going on. And I have a funny feeling that that's a good strategy in or out of recovery, that you should review what you've done that day and decide what you could improve the next day, because there's an expectation that every day will be a new day and every day will be an improvement from the day before. I think we tend to conceptualize that in recovery, but it's a pretty much life, don't you think?
Yeah.
It is.
I think so.
How many hours of sleep do you get? And I think I need to ask all you guys
I don't get a
so I
lot.
can help myself with that.
On the average, believe it or not, about 4 hours.
That's me too.
What about you?
You asked me this the last time I met with you.
Yeah.
6 to 7.
Wow, you're
That's
lucky.
good. Yeah, I'm
I
telling
only get about 4.
I think I get about 4.
Yeah.
I
I have
and I'm
to
like
get
you,
my
Pat.
sleep.
Something happens when I go to bed
Yeah.
at night. My clock is, that whole thing is moving about the workings of the day. What's next? I don't know. Just
People used to talk to me, and I don't know, maybe as advocates you maybe heard these, and I'd be interested to see if you did, is that people used to get really freaked out because they would have like dreams of relapsing.
you. Right.
And I used to say to them when I would talk to them, dreams of relapsing are kind of a good thing because if it goes into your unconscious, it's not in your consciousness, so you're not relapsing.
Yeah, right.
So if it's in your if it's a dream, then something's forcing it into that state, as
okay.
opposed to being in consciousness,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
in consciousness, if you wouldn't have the dream, you just do it.
Right,
If, you know,
right.
so what happens is you have these dreams and you wake up in a cold sweat. I mean, I don't have much anymore,
Yeah.
but I remember waking up and saying, "Oh,
remember those days.
thank God it was just a dream." That's what you say because you said, "Oh God, I relapsed. Now I got to start all over again and start from 0 to 1." I mean, and all that. But you and I know that. I mean, I don't know. A lot of people don't know that dreams really are a sign that you're healing more because it's not allowing it in consciousness. At least that's
yeah.
That's
well,
a,
you
that's
know.
a good point.
And it's
I
just
never
the
knew
way
that.
that it
I never
Yeah,
thought
that's
about
what
that.
I've always
Right.
thought about.
That's the job of it.
Yeah, that's the job of it.
Under the disease, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, to move in on you when
Right.
in your relaxing state.
Yeah, and the other
And
thing
seems
was-
like the crazy part is the disease never gives up.
No, no, we often talk about people say, "Well, I relapse." Well, relapse is like a normal part of recovery. I mean, I don't mean it should be normal for 50 years.
Right,
But
but it should
to
be.
relapse in the first 2 to 5 years is not an uncommon experience.
I agree
The
with you.
relapse rates are significant in the first 2 years. So you're at a critical point in your recovery because you said 19 months or 20?
March 5th. we
Yeah,
need to-
see, so it's a critical point in your recovery. And one of the ways people have gotten through it, at least the way I talk to them sometimes, I say things like, if you're a Christian person, the death of Christ is only significant because of the resurrection. Without the resurrection, his
point.
death would be meaningless. So if you look at relapse like the death of something, that your recovery is really your resurrection.
Right.
And look what happened when he was resurrected.
All power come to
Yeah. So
Right.
that's what you have to really
That's why
focus
I
on.
gave you that October 2nd date is my
As a
resurrection.
resurrection.
Yeah, your resurrection.
I
Now,
know
I don't
the
want
term, right?
And I don't want to go too crazy because a lot of people don't want to go.
Where we go.
Yeah. A lot of people don't say, "Oh God, here he goes on the
they
religion."
go.
I'm not going religion. I'm just saying is that if you look at the way life goes,
Right,
and
right.
how it circles and comes back to, because even recovery. When we talk about recovery, we talk about things like this linear thing. I got 2 years. I got 15 years. I got 20 years. Well, life isn't linear. Life is really circular. It
Yeah,
actually
exactly.
goes like this
Right.
life.
Exactly.
Right.
So
Exactly.
what happens
It is.
is when it comes back to you, you have to say, "Oh, I know what that is."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you got to like move aside and kind of let it go
Kinda
by.
let it go by, right.
And that's difficult to do because you're so used to, as a drug person or an alcoholic, is grabbing it and trying to wrestle with it. And you
Right.
don't really have to wrestle with it. You just
Right.
have to make sure it doesn't get embedded inside
Yes,
you.
yeah.
Don't you think?
Good point.
Something you always talk about, the shadowing.
Yeah, I talk about shadowing a lot.
and
Yeah.
it's important that I notice as the years progress, I always look back and say, okay, how does my shadow look at me now?
Yeah.
I want to be able to define that because a lot of times people say, well, what do you mean by that? You got to get to the end of you.
Well, see what the shadow does. The shadow is an old Jungian. It is a Jungian concept, Carl Jung concept. And basically, if you think about shadow boxing, that's actually what you do. You actually box with yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
And eventually, you want to knock your shadow into humanity. See, because
Okay.
what she's doing is humanizing her shadow. See, she's taking her addiction and she's making it life.
Yeah.
So when you humanize it, it doesn't hurt you. See, but if you hide it, you get hurt by it because there's always something like, ooh,
My
coming
secrets
after
keep me
me.
sick.
Yeah, it'll keep you sick.
Yeah,
But
good
that's a
point.
struggle we all have with the shadow, and people talk about, I often in class will talk about you need to learn to shadow box. You need to learn to confront the evil inside you
Yeah.
and humanize it, because we all understand that we're not 100% good people,
Right.
and we know that of course we're in flesh, as they say. I don't want
Right.
to go too
Too deep in
spiritual on
religion,
you.
right?
But we do have to play with that space,
Right.
because the people who make it are people who humanize it.
Right.
And the people who make it see recovery as a part of a life process,
Yes.
not like I'm in recovery and on Tuesday night I go here. It really becomes a part of your 7-day journey
Yep.
every
Right.
week. Don't you think, as
Absolutely,
an
no doubt.
advocate?
Daily
Absolutely.
reprieve.
Yeah.
4 hours a day.
Yeah.
Yes.
See,
All the time.
so when you say you're an advocate, you're giving back really to yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't,
Right.
wake
Right.
up one day on a Sunday morning and just decide I'm not going to answer my phone because I don't want to help anybody today, and I'm going to park in front of this fire hydrant because I'm just feeling like it. Like that's old behavior. Something as simple
Yeah.
as that. I can't do that
Absolutely.
because I'm trying to get over on someone. I'm trying to get away with something.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that building up before and experienced relapse from those little behaviors creeping up.
Yeah.
It's actually,
Yeah.
being in recovery is like a funny world, kind of, in a sense, because it's not like, it's not like normal, but you're not normal because you've done a lot of drugs and alcohol. So let me say what I mean with it. It's like students, I give students my cell phone number, and I tell them, call me like 8 in the morning to 10 at night, 7 days a week.
Okay.
Doesn't matter, you can call me. If I am in a bad space, I probably won't pick up. But most of the time I do pick up. I said, just don't call me after 10 because I'm trying to sleep. But I know I'm only getting 4 hours, but I'm trying. And you want to know something? There's a certain amount of comfort in people knowing that you're available
Absolutely.
to them. They don't even have to, although
Right.
you do have a few students who, every Sunday about 6 o'clock I get a call because they're struggling with their Sunday. Because they're early in recovery. And I've often said to myself, I wonder if I wasn't there, what would happen? And I say, well, I'm not that important, something else would happen.
Yeah.
They would,
That's a hard one there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you think, when you think about it?
Yeah.
So we're
yeah.
advocates all the time.
I think so.
Yeah, don't you think?
Absolutely,
It's
and
not
it's-
like a thing you turn off.
Yeah, and it's good to be accountable today, accountability for us, and to do for them what others did for us, and that's what I always think about. People so selflessly would pick me up to take me places and would take me to eat, and they just said they wanted nothing back. They just said pay it forward.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
I'm in a position that I'm able to pay it
Pay it
forward.
forward,
And
yeah.
I'm able to, if someone calls me and they're incarcerated, I don't really put money on people's books because I know that you can get things in jail, so I don't do that. And I might be a little harsh with it sometimes. I feel as though eat the jail food and then maybe you'll stop going there.
Yeah.
But
You do find religion sometime there because you get
I
better
did.
food in some places. It's like
Yeah.
if you find your Jewishness, you can get kosher food and stuff.
Well,
I mean, seriously.
I see people say-
I mean, seriously. I'm not joking. I've had people say that to me.
I've seen people convert to get better food.
Yeah, exactly
So-
right.
But but I will go up and visit them and be there for
Right.
Yeah,
I
did you
will-
know that? Is
I
that
didn't
right?
know.
Am I
That's
right or
right.
wrong? That's
Oh,
what-
it's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I will go there and show up and visit them because I know what those half-hour visits, from my family did for me every
Yeah.
week. And, I started doing my 12-step fellowship again in there. And
okay.
seeing women that I knew come in to
Yeah.
do meetings was amazing. And I had the opportunity to do that, to go back onto the unit that, I was on
Yeah.
and bring that back.
Oh, okay. Were you at
And,
DOC? Is that where you were, Department of Corrections?
Riverside Correctional
Oh, Riverside,
Facility.
yeah. Riverside, yeah.
So, that was really important for me. And, if I get a phone call and somebody needs, clothes, a jacket, something like that, and if I have it or I'm able to get it, I'll drop it off because that's what people did for me,
We used to bring them to the Salvation Army, the stores, the Salvation
Yeah.
Army stores,
Salvation
and we
Army.
dressed them up.
Yeah.
Because they were
awesome.
going wherever they were going. They had to go to try and get whatever.
Yeah.
And we used to run through, Salvation Army because some of the clothes there were pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, from people turning them in because sometimes what you consider old looks new.
Oh, yes.
If
I
you've
love
ever
thrift
gone
stores.
through.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love
absolutely.
I used to take my daughter, she's now 30ish, and when she was about 8 or 9, we had to go get clothes for some people, so we used to go to Salvation Army. I take her with me. Lo and behold, she turns about 15, and she's shopping in the Salvation Army. You know, these funky this and funky that, you know, outfits that you would wear. So it's a kind of a interesting world out there.
So I wanted to mention something too. You know, like what recovery does for our family. Too.
Okay.
That's really important for me because, you know, my family, I didn't go near them when I was using. I didn't go near them at all. I would check in with them on, you know, on my phone. That was it. But like today, being able to have like your family back in your life and being able to give them sleep and them not having to worry. I have a sister who will be 18 in a couple of weeks, and she told me she's told me before she wants to be like me. I never thought she would want to be like me, and I think that that's really inspiring for people to hear who may be like viewing and in active addiction right now or active alcoholism. You know, they. Like for me, I felt like a failure. You know, this kid used to get in bed with me to make sure I was still breathing when she was little.
Oh.
And today, it's not like that. She looks up to me. She's even an advocate for recovery, and she's not one of us. And it's amazing the things that she does. Like she has helped homeless people that are still sober to this day. One in particular. And because she saw what her older sister was able to do, and it inspired her to be helpful to others like us. So I think that that's really important to speak about how what we do when we make a positive change, how it affects our family as a whole, and how we are able to get them back and recreate those relationships to be better than ever. Because the relationship I have today with my mom and my sister and my aunt is
And to be
amazing.
honest with you, so often they get destroyed because, you know, you keep lying and cheating and stealing from your mother and your father. That when you get, and then you, how many times have you told them you're in recovery? You know, and then you're not.
I got it this time. It's going to be different, but I'm not doing anything different.
You know, it's funny because many times those behaviors are indicative of us relapsing. The lies. But something happened on the last time. Something said, you don't need to call anybody and share anything. You begin to live it. And I thought that was, for so many times we have lied, cheated, mistrust. So I'll go back to when you cross over, it's not important to share with anybody. You ain't got to tell your mom, your pop, your loved ones. You begin to live it. And people begin to see hope and healing and faith. I got a sister that's an alcoholic. She become a change agent. People see her and she says, "Oh, you need to call my brother." I get calls from people say, "Yeah, I got your number from your sister."
I think that is a very important aspect because, you know, we all talk good talk. And if anybody been in addiction, you know, we're very good at talking. You don't have to have a degree in communications. And so I agree with you 100%. You know, don't worry about what I say. Look at what I do. And I don't have no problem inviting folks to watch me. In fact, I need them to watch me. It helps me. But at the same time, they can see the progress rather than hearing it all the time. Because, again, I've been in the 14 rehabs. So you can imagine my people, 14. I'm a military man also. So it's very easy to get into, it's nothing but country clubs, but it's very easy all around the country. And so they heard a million times, I'm going to get it together. I'm doing so well. You know, so now talk is cheap. Put your money where your mouth is. You know, and so I try to live it every day. And beyond service, you know, there are things and commitments I have to people, to my family, to my wife, to my children. And I got to move up to that responsibility. And I need to do it more than just words. My actions indeed need to speak for myself.
Well, I think service is really, that's a key word to being an advocate. There's no question about it.
24 hours a day.
It is.
Sometimes I'm afraid to tell people all the things I do because they say there's no way he can be doing all these things.
I have the same problem,
I have a similar problem.
You know, I have to water it down, and sometimes when people say, well, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do. And I have to kind of water it down because if I begin to give them the whole run of the day or everything that I do and involved with, they say, it's no way. But there's a man that I serve who has allowed me to be who I am.
He's using me as his vessel. And I have to help his kids, you know. And I like what you're mentioning. Like recovery is in our feet, you know. It's all action, you know. I have to like talk the talk. I have to walk the walk all the time. And Yeah, people say that to me too, you know, and then they say, well, what time do you take for yourself? And I'm like, but it's not about me anymore. It was about me for so long, and look what happened, me making it about me. Like, you know, and...
Yeah, there is a balance.
I think there is a definite need of balance.
We need
now,
a balance.
I'm a lot like you. You know, for me, it's just, and again, I'm trying to avoid bringing in spirituality or religion, although there's a definite need for spirituality, because in my opinion, you can't make it without some type of spirituality.
I think spirituality is
We agree with
important.
that.
We all agree with you on that.
We don't have
a problem with that.
you know, God's
But then again, we grew up in that movement, so we don't have a problem with spirituality.
But I think,
Well, you guys grew up in that movement.
Yeah.
well, I know you're a baby, right?
Yeah, but we're the old heads.
And I'm speaking to you
You
specifically.
indoctrinated into
I'm
it
speaking to you
now.
specifically because you got to do something for yourself.
Yeah.
Go to a movie, go bowling. Service is beautiful, but unless you do something for yourself, you know what I mean, you're going to lose that balance.
But you know, a lot of, you know, I hate to say this, but a lot of people think I'm a very outgoing person. I'm not. I'm more of an introvert than I am an extrovert.
I don't
I don't believe in
I
that.
actually feel the most comfortable with my own thoughts.
Really?
Alone.
Yeah.
I actually like being alone.
Wow.
I'm getting to that point where I can't
I
do
really
it.
enjoy it because I
Me
could
too.
like talk to
I'm scared of
myself
it.
and do all kinds of things. And sometimes when people talk to me, I want to say, you know, that's such bull. That I'd rather not waste my time listening.
Yeah.
I know that sounds kind of ignorant maybe as a person who helps people, but there were times in my life where I kind of like, even though I am outgoing, you know, but I actually feel most comfortable
With yourself.
with myself alone.
Wow.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
Because
I'd
look at
prefer
how long
that.
you probably didn't.
Yeah, I prefer that.
Okay.
And I'm like, yeah, thank God to hear that, because people say, everybody knows you.
Yeah, you're outgoing too. See,
But I'm really like so okay. Like this, if you ask my wife, they say, but when he go home, how is he when he get home? She say, there was something to be bothered. Not that, but I can just do me.
Yeah.
I don't go to sporting events when people like
Yeah, I'm not much of
games
that,
and all
yeah.
that. Listen, leave me alone. I'm good.
Yeah.
It's not selfish. It's just the way I've been conditioned.
And I wonder if that had something to do with us being advocates for ourselves, finding that
Yes.
space
Yes.
where we could just be ourselves and be alone. I mean, I don't mind quiet. Doesn't bother me. I know people who
I
get
do that
crazy
too.
over quiet.
Right.
They can't handle it at all.
I wasn't able to before, but I'm in a place where I can now.
Oh,
That's a
okay.
good
And where I like it, you
That's a
know.
good thing.
How do you think you got to that space? And so, you know, what do you think contributed to that for you? I mean, was it?
I'm going to say, I don't want to say being comfortable with I guess kind of like being in tune with myself.
Okay.
Being in tune with myself and trusting in the process and trusting in my higher power. That's huge for me.
Yeah.
Just trusting that everything's going to be okay, having acceptance if things are the way they are right now and the way they're supposed to be right now.
Yeah.
And that helps me to be okay being alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was forced into it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my wife wouldn't talk to me.
Oh really?
You know, you wake up in the middle of the night, you know what I mean, and I can't sleep, and I'm you know, transitioning into recovery, and she wouldn't talk to me. So I was forced to be alone with my thoughts and myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I love it.
Yeah.
I look forward to the opportunity every morning just to meditate and talk to my higher power and read my Bible. That's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me strong. And like I said, 3 to 4 hours every morning. But it took a lot of years to get to that
Yeah,
point.
it does take
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Self-care.
Well, because you're so hectic in life. You know, life, if you let it, it'll just take you on a
never
roller
stops.
coaster ride
Yeah.
real fast.
Yes.
And sometimes you want to stay up, and so you do drugs to stay up, and you know, and you get pretty involved.
And then the thought just came to my mind when you said roller coaster. You know what I mean? Like hitting painful times in sobriety. Like I've gone through the most painful thing that I never thought I would go through, you know, which was losing my ex-boyfriend to his addiction,
Wow.
you know.
Wow.
And I stayed sober through that because, you know, it was taught to me that we grow through pain and that we don't grow when things are going well and we're getting our way and the job that we want and, you know, when things are falling into place, like we grow when we're uncomfortable. And that growth is amazing, and that things happen to, like, I believe that things happen to us, but they don't happen for us. They happen for the next person, and that all my experiences are to help someone else. And you know, and that's a beautiful thing, like being able to understand and recognize that when I'm going through pain, that I can trust and know it's going to be okay.
Now, let me just ask a general question, not necessarily you can answer it and anyone can answer it, is that, did you come to that reality as a recovering person through a therapist or through just fellowship? See, and let me answer mine. I mean, I was in therapy for a couple of years and all. I actually came to it, for me, more through fellowship. I mean, I actually found it more comforting to talk to people who struggled in their life. Not necessarily in recovery. They could have lost a husband, a wife. I mean, they had life struggles that meant something to them. And although I was a therapist for many, many, many years, I've often thought that you kind of help someone move in a certain place, but eventually they have to take over their recovery. I can only, you know, I can steer the ship for a short while for you because you're, you know, and maybe you need medication, maybe you need this, and maybe that. But the reality is, the ship, eventually, you have to steer the ship.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For me, it was through fellowship. Therapy never worked for me. Therapy never worked for me. It was just through fellowship and through selfless people in the fellowship. Who took time.
And before I get complaints on the CCPTV, I do value people in therapy. I don't want you to think that that I don't value it. But I think a lot of the gross majority of people eventually find their purpose in life through, I think, stepping, or whatever word you like to use for it.
Yeah, fellowshipping, you know, one of the creative ways of moving anywhere is from a biblical standpoint, and I'm speaking directly to you, or not just to you, but when reading literature, whether it's a Bible or NA or AA or CA or AAA, whatever you're reading, and then praying on that, and then the most important value is when you gather and fellowshipping. Fellowshipping means a lot.
Yes.
That's whether you go to a church or a synagogue or the mosque or NA meetings, 12, wherever you go, fellowshipping is a key component of finding out that you're not the only one that's struggling with whatever. That's so important. People say, "Oh, I don't do that. I don't do that." Here it is, 27 years later. I still do what's been working for me 27 years, and I've created a level of balance. So I don't know, man.
For me, it's also fellowship, but believe it or not, there was people outside of the NA fellowship, outside of the recovery fellowship that helped me. My wife, who never been into drugs or alcohol, my son, who never been into drugs or alcohol, and like I said, the movement that I started, I was surrounded by people that believed in me. You know, some of them was addicts in recovery, most of them was not. They just believed in me, and they kept pouring into me, and they kept pushing me.
Wow.
And so, you know, when I really came, and I did go away to the VA in Coatesville, but when I finally thought about all the people that's been, you know, pushing behind and believe in me and praying for me, then I made amends with the God of my understanding.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that changed my life.
That's a good way to end this segment today. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I would like to thank my co-host, Rick Ford, and my two very special guests for sharing their life with us. I would also like to thank you, the viewers, for tuning in. You have been watching the Tapestry of Life on CCPTV, the Emmy-nominated educational channel of Community College of Philadelphia. I am Dr. Pascal Scholes, Professor of Behavioral Health and Human Services and Director of the Office of Collegiate Recovery, Community College of Philadelphia. See you next time.